Welcome to the Swine Health Blackbelt Podcast, the latest swine health research digested for you. My name's Dr. Clayton Johnson, and I'm the host for today's episode. Joining me in the podcast studios this week is Dr. Jeroen Dewulf, Professor of Veterinary Epidemiology at Ghent University in Belgium. Dr. Dewulf, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast. Why don't you share a little bit of background on yourself for the audience?
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's really an honor to be here. And as you said, I'm a veterinarian by training, and I'm working at Ghent University in Belgium, where I'm heading the epidemiology unit. And within our research group, we've been focusing on the research of infection prevention and biosecurity for already many years. I did my own PhD on the prevention of classical swine fever when that was still a hot topic, and there were lots of epidemics at that time in Europe. But then I moved towards looking into endemic diseases and also in looking into how can we prevent them to avoid the use of antibiotics. And throughout my whole career, this line of biosecurity and infection prevention has been there as a very important focus point, actually.
Yes, well, we have multiple swine fevers to worry about now. And as I understand it, you've been working a lot on biosecurity. Certainly in Belgium and all over the world, biosecurity is a hot topic right now. Why don't you give the audience a little bit of a flavor about, for you, why is biosecurity so important for pig farms?
Yeah, well, biosecurity it's really one of the key cornerstones of producing animals, and I always compare it. For me, it's a pyramid, and at the basis of this pyramid, the foundations are good biosecurity. And on top of these foundations, this good biosecurity, you can add a lot of preventive measures, such as vaccines, for instance, but there's others, all feed additives, water additives, things to enhance the resilience of the animals. And if we do those things good, we can reduce the need for curative treatments. And whenever we have to treat sick animals, it actually means that we failed already first time, because our primary goal should be to keep healthy animals healthy. And that is really the focus of all the work we do. And I often like to compare it with building a house. If you want to build a big house, you need a solid fundament. And if you only have a very weak fundament, you can build a house and it might stand for 1 year or 2 years. But whenever a strong wind comes by, your house will go down. And that's exactly the same. And often what happens is that we increasingly build bigger houses, but we forget to strengthen our fundaments. And that's where we need to work on, to make sure that this fundament of infection prevention biosecurity is really very, very solid.
Yeah, it's cliche, but it's true that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure in the health world. And I love the analogy of a strong house requires a strong core. I know you've done actually some research studies to look at farms with good biosecurity versus farms maybe where biosecurity is an opportunity. Do you find good associations with better performance and overall better sustainability of the farm if there is biosecurity in place?
Yes, absolutely. We did that. And actually, when we started on the research on biosecurity 15 or even longer, many more years before, it was actually very obvious or very interesting to notice that lots of people were talking about biosecurity, but very few people really had shown in a quantitative way that indeed better biosecurity results in the better health of animals. It's quite logical to assume that it's so, but it's another challenge to really demonstrate that. And to be able to do so, we first developed a scoring system, which we're going to talk about maybe later a little bit more. But the scoring system was really developed from a scientific research point of view. We wanted to associate biosecurity with the number of things you mentioned, with production, with health, with antimicrobial usage. But to be able to do so, you first need to be able to measure it. So once we've had this measurement system to quantify the levels of biosecurity, then indeed we started to study the relationships. And we've done that in many different ways. We've done it in cross-sectional studies where we just look at the level of biosecurity at a certain moment, the level of production or the state of the production at that same moment. And there, in the first several studies, we really shown that in farms which have a higher level of biosecurity, you typically saw lower incidence of a certain number of diseases, but especially we saw also on average lower levels of antimicrobial usage. At that stage, you still have to be careful, but this is we only see associations. We haven't shown any causal relationships. But the next step then that we did is that we went in with intervention studies where we really selected, for instance, we had a big intervention study in Belgium where we selected 60 pig farms that we followed during a period of at least 1 year. During that period, we coached them towards better biosecurity. And at the same time, we looked at all the antimicrobial usage data, but also the production data. And we typically saw that in less than 1 year time, we could halve the amount of antimicrobials to be used. And we could also at the same time increase the production numbers in terms of wheat piglets per sow per year, also in terms of daily weight gain. So it was really a win-win situation where the farmers win in terms of production, the economical consequences of better production, but also I would say society wins in the sense that there is much less antimicrobial usage and therefore also a lower selection pressure towards resistant bacteria, which are an issue for public health, but they're also an issue for animal health. So there's many people that gain from this change towards a better biosecurity.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like oftentimes biosecurity is guilty until proven innocent. And Jeroen, what I mean by that is I, as a veterinarian, I have to prove a very difficult task if I'm proposing a biosecurity investment. I have to show the producer this will result in a positive economic return. And we always know what the cost is, right? It is easy to calculate the cost of the investment I'm asking the producer to make, but the return on that investment is inherently difficult. You want to talk to us a little bit about what your team has built for an objective way to measure biosecurity and how that might be used with farmers that are looking to value biosecurity investments?
Yeah, definitely, certainly. And I just want to say that the same challenge you just explained as a challenge we also experience. And the default setting in the mind of the farmer is they look at the costs and they have difficulties in seeing the benefits. And that is where we have to work with. That's also where those studies and increasingly more studies that are showing these effects are very helpful. And that brings me indeed to this tool. And the tool that we have developed, we've called biocheck.ugent. So biocheck with CK at the end. And ugent obviously comes from Ghent University, where the tool was developed. And that biocheck.ugent tool is freely available online. It is a kind of a citizen science project in the sense that we provide a tool online available. Everybody can use it totally for free. You don't even need to log in. You just go there and just use the system and you'll get the report. The only thing for us in there is that at that same moment, you're actually collecting data for us. So in that way, we are building a big data set. And currently, we have a data set with more than 55,000 farms into our data set, where we have data on the levels of biosecurity in a very standardized way. And that, of course, allows us to do much more research on the applications of biosecurity and then all kinds of associations to be found. But this tool is quite simple. It looks as an easy questionnaire. So you just go to the website, you go for the surveys. It's available in different languages, obviously in English, but also, for instance, in Spanish, Italian, German, French, Chinese, Vietnamese. So we have it in many different languages. You go to this tool, you start a survey, and you start filling in. It's around 100 questions, not always exactly the same because it depends on a number of conditionalities. Sometimes some questions will disappear, will be added, depending on the specific situation of the farm. But it takes you, I would say, 20 to 30 minutes to fill it in. Once you filled it in, there is a quite smart algorithm which is running behind the scene, which translate the answers into scores. And it's a score going from 0 to 100, very simple in the sense 0 means a total absence of any biosecurity measure. 100 means the perfect situation where you do everything perfectly. Of course, in reality, you always end up somewhere in between. And the score is also subdivided in these subcategories. We have subcategories for external biosecurity, subcategories for internal biosecurity. And in this way, this report gives you in 2 pages in a very easy and a very objective evaluation of the strong and weak points of the biosecurity in your specific farm. So it is as a veterinarian, as a consultant, but even as a producer, you can simply use the system, fill in, give the honest questions, and in that way it will also translate you in an honest evaluation of your farm. It's totally anonymous, so we don't ask you for your name, your address, we just ask your country and a certain region, the state, but we don't go deeper than that, so the data is 100% anonymous. But it helps you very much in evaluating your situation. And that's really starting point. Once you get there, once you have the report, the evaluation, a kind of an audit of your farm, you can take the next steps by digging into those parts of the biosecurity which are a bit more weak, which need enforcement, where you have to go and start to improve. And that's also where then the veterinarian, the consultant, plays an important role, because that's the person which is best placed to give these advices and to say, well, look, apparently you're scoring quite low in transport of animals, or you're scoring low in cleaning and disinfection, or you're scoring low in movement and walking lines through the farm. Let's work there, and I'll give you some advices on what we can do to improve the situation.
Through continuous innovation, trusted solutions, and accountable insights, 𝗘𝗅𝗽𝗀𝗃 is invested in helping you achieve the full value of every decision. Their portfolio offers solutions to manage disease challenges, minimize variation, and mitigate mortality to optimize pig health.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for coming on and sharing that information with us, Jeroen. It's a tremendous program that you guys have developed. It's free to users throughout the world in many different languages. So I just want to echo what you're sharing from before, that if you aren't familiar with this biosecurity tool, please go check it out. And Jeroen, one more time for the audience, what's the website that they need to go to, or how do they go access that tool?
So it's www.biocheck.ugent.be. That's the website, but the very easy way is just, if you Google biocheck.ugent, you'll find it immediately.
Perfect. Dr. Google saves us once again.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dewulf. I really appreciate your coming on the show. And to our audience, thank you for listening in to the Swine Health Blackbelt Podcast. Please check out our website at 𝗙inehealthblackbelt.com, and make sure you subscribe to the podcast so that you don't miss any of our great episodes coming out every Friday. For Dr. Jeroen Dewulf, I'm Dr. Clayton Johnson. Thanks, and have a great rest of your day.
Hey, everybody. We're always searching for the latest and greatest research to share each week. If you have a swine health-related research trial and would like to come on the show and talk about it, share it with us, please feel free to email the research to hello@wisenetics.com. That's HELLO@WISENETIX.com.